So good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you're connecting from. I'm delighted to welcome you to the next Alumni Career Webinar, Is Grad School a Good Move for My Career? With Kevin Kiley. I'm Maura Sweeney, Director of Alumni Career and Professional Development at Holy Cross, and I'm delighted to welcome you to today's webinar offered exclusively for the Holy Cross community. Today, we'll build upon a few webinars that Kevin has presented for the Holy Cross community over the past 2 years. And you can find recordings of those webinars on the Holy Cross Alumni Career Development page if you want to check those out too. We'll be together for about an hour today. And after Kevin's formal presentation, we'll take questions from you for as long as time allows. So I encourage you to use the Q&A function located on the webinar control panel to submit those questions. This presentation is recorded and will be made available to all participants in a few days, and it'll live on the Alumni Career Development website. Now it's my pleasure to introduce you to Kevin. So with Grad School Roadmap, Kevin coaches individuals on the graduate school admissions process, everything from preliminary research and preparing applications to interviews and choosing among offers. His background includes 5+ years as an MBA admissions director at Washington University in St. Louis, and 5+ years in corporate talent development. He has successfully coached graduate and undergraduate students, rising leaders, mid-career professionals, career switchers, and medical doctors. Kevin has an MBA from WashU's Olin Business School, a professional certified coach through the International Coach Federation. He is also a career coach and founded his own company, Career Roadmap, and he lives with his wife in Dallas-Fort Worth area. Thank you so much for being here with us, Kevin. It is a true pleasure to get to partner with you and hear all of your great advice. And with that, I will hand things over.
Thank you for that generous introduction, Maura. It's always a pleasure to be working with you and to be interacting with the wonderful alums of Holy Cross. Thank you very much. And to all of you joining us here today, thank you so much. I hope you all know and understand very well what a wonderful resource you have in Maura Sweeney. She is absolutely wonderful, completely dedicated, loves what she does. And what a wonderful resource that you have as an alum of what a great institution. I can tell you that not every university has that kind of resource available. So good for you. We have a lot of things to get into here today, so I want to jump right into this here. As Maura mentioned, I have been fortunate enough to present for Holy Cross before. And if you've been in one of my webinars previously, you may have actually seen this one particular question, but it's just that relevant to what we're talking about today. So it is worth us repeating and going over again. The biggest mistake that prospective graduate students make, if you were to choose to pursue graduate school, which of these 4 mistakes, they're all mistakes, but which of these 4 would be the most noteworthy, the biggest one you could potentially make? We have the poll open. Thank you for that, Maura. And we'll see where people's minds are with this in just a moment. But again, these are all mistakes, but which one of these is, you could say, is the most consequential one, and therefore the one that you want to avoid the most? Once we get a critical mass on this, we'll see what people are thinking. All right. Okay, wait until the last minute to complete applications to avoid unavoidable mistakes. Definitely a big one that I've seen many times in my coaching practice. People kind of take that deadline very seriously and literally, and they wait until the very last moment. It was at 43% there. 29% not doing adequate research before applying. I would like to shake the hands of the 29% who said that. That, in a very, very real sense, is the biggest mistake that a prospective graduate student could make. And we had 14% in the other 2. All are mistakes, all are significant, all are ones that you want to avoid. But not doing adequate research before applying is huge. The research that you do going into, even before you decide if you're where you might go, is whether or not I'm going to do grad school at all to begin with. That's absolutely huge. And a big component of that research is, why would I be doing this? Do I need to do this for my intended career? Do I think I need to do this? And if so, how do I know that? You have to know your why going into this whole process before you even start researching schools and programs and geographic areas and kinds of degrees and program formats and other things that go into grad school. Knowing, why would I be doing this? If you don't know your why, oh my gosh, it's virtually impossible to make other sound decisions. Your why becomes your North Star in the entire process. Your priorities become clear when you have a very strong sense of your why. Why would I be doing this? So not have been said, let's think about another poll here. Your why. It's okay if you don't happen to know the answer to this question, number 5, I'm not sure. But hey, what would be your main reason for going to grad school? What is your why? It could be to qualify yourself for a new career path you've already chosen, to accelerate your career growth in some place you already are, maybe to explore different career possibilities. Maybe it's something else not listed above. Once again, there are no wrong answers here. It's okay if you're in any of these camps, because after all, there are a lot of reasons for attending grad school or potentially attending grad school. But knowing your why up front and having a good sense of this, at least at some point, is going to be really, really important. So we'll give it another moment or two and then see where things are at. Wow, 71% are accelerators. That's awesome. I'm going to make a note of that real quick. 71% accelerators. Wow, nobody's going to qualify themselves for a new career that they've already chosen. Okay, and then we've got explore different career possibilities, and I'm not sure. Kudos to anyone who said I'm not sure, because that takes that's some bravery right there. I appreciate that level of response. Thank you. If your thought is number 1, number 2, at least for right now, you're going to qualify yourself for a new career, or you're going to accelerate in the path that you're already on. The question is okay, that's fine. How do you know that? How are you sure? What research have you done? To whom have you spoken? How do you actually know that? And maybe you have a good answer to that, and maybe perhaps you don't. But you make sure you want to just be rock solid on that. If your response was number 3, to explore different career possibilities, how do you know that grad school is the optimal setting for that? Because when it comes to where you are now versus where you want to be in your career, it's not always going to be the case that grad school is going to be part of the bridge, or part of the how you're going to sort of come across that gap. It could be part of it, but it's not necessarily part of the component. And so it's just something to be thinking about. So thank you for sharing that. I do appreciate it. 2 assumptions for today's webinar. Number 1 is that we're talking about grad school for career enhancement, and not just for your own sort of learning and edification. It's been my experience that probably more than 99% of graduate students are doing it somehow, some way, to do something to enhance or to help their careers. Not everyone, but the overwhelming majority. There's some sort of career benefit to doing a graduate degree. If by chance you're thinking about doing a grad degree purely for your own learning and edification, awesome, good for you. I'm glad to know that. And I would say that you're rare in a good way, and that's a good thing. But for today's discussion, we're talking about grad school relevant to a career journey. The other assumption is that you actually have a choice to make in this matter, and that is that you actually may or may not choose to pursue graduate school. There are various career paths where a graduate degree or a doctorate are required, and in fact, this is not optional. And obviously a great example of this is if you want to be a medical doctor, you're going to need an MD or DO. You're going to have that degree somehow, some way. There are other career paths where graduate school may or may not be necessary. So the assumption today is that you actually have an option as to whether or not you might do graduate study. So highly subjective decision. My decision on this could be different than Maura's decision on this, could be different than Sally's decision, than on Thomas's decision. I mean, everyone is going to have their own set of decision-making processes on this because there are merits and the opposite for both sides of this discussion. This is your decision, not anyone else's. You got to watch out for this herd mentality. This is something I experience a lot, both when I was an admissions director at WashU and also now in coaching prospective graduate students. We talk a little bit about that. Why am I doing this? And for many people, a big component of it, unfortunately, is simply, well, all my friends from undergraduate are all pursuing their graduate degree, so I'm going to, I figure I should do it too. Or everybody in my company, after 2 or 3 years there, that seems like they all leave to go do MBAs or something along those lines. And while that might be true that a lot of people are going to do it, doesn't mean that you should do it, okay? This is a highly, highly subjective process, and only you can best address this whole thing. So coming out of today's webinar, I don't have that one single answer for you. I'm not going to be able to answer this and say, this is the answer, because it doesn't work that way. This is a decision for you that only you can make. I'm going to give you some food for thought on both sides of the discussion. And then I hope that by doing that, I provide you with a little further clarity about which direction you might end up choosing. And again, there is no wrong answer as to whether or not to go to grad school. Yes, I should. No, I shouldn't. It's very subjective. So here's the agenda. We're going to go over 5 reasons to pursue grad school, then 8 reasons to not pursue it. As you heard Maura give that generous introduction, you might have heard the fact that, yes, I was I was an admissions director at WashU, and think, okay, Kevin here is going to tell us all about why we have to go to grad school. Well, no, that's actually not going to be the case today. I'm very happy to be presenting both sides. I also worked in corporate talent development, and I can tell you that there are some amazingly talented people and on the corporate side, on the nonprofit side, in many sectors of the economy who are doing just fine with all different levels of education. And so if a graduate degree is for you, great, do it. If it's not, hey, that's okay too. Give yourself permission to make either decision here, okay? And then after we talk about both the why to do it and why to maybe not do it, we'll talk about some ways you can reinforce your decision, and then we'll talk about paying for it and also offer 3 case studies that kind of illustrate some of the payments and how you might fund it and that sort of thing. So, all right, we already had an introduction about me, so you already kind of know about me. I do career coaching, I do grad school admissions coaching and application coaching. I was an admissions director, I worked in corporate talent development, and so I bring both sides, both perspectives to the discussion here today. And I am a certified coach. As Maura mentioned, I work with Grad School Roadmap on grad school application coaching. And I also do career coaching through my own company, Career Roadmap. If you're interested in connecting with me, those are the websites right there. I'm also real big on LinkedIn. I would be thrilled if you sent me a LinkedIn connection request. And I also do a free 30-minute phone call for people interested in my coaching. And so if you'd like to do that, we can further discuss you and your situation and how my coaching might be a benefit to you. So that's a little bit about that. Before we jump into the heart of the agenda, one more thing, just to kind of get a sense for where you are. What kind of degree are you most seriously considering at this point? Obviously, this doesn't lock you into anything, but this is just, if you would, to give me a better sense of kind of where the audience is and what kinds of degrees you're all thinking about. You might be thinking about more than one of these, and that's fine. But the question is which one are you most seriously considering at this point in time? We'll get a sense of this in just a moment. I'm not sure. Wow. Oh, okay. Oh, wow. Another big group here. So 78% said a master's in some other discipline, i.e. not business. All right. And the other 22% are actually looking for masters in business. Okay. That is good to know. So it looks like, so we don't have anyone interested in a doctorate in this group, both on the PhD kind of side and on the medical doctorate side. Okay, so we're talking master's degrees, mostly in some other discipline other than business, but a good group also in business. Thank you for that. That's very helpful. Okay, so let's jump in and talk about 5 reasons to pursue grad school. First reason is the number of degree holders. It is highly likely that your competition for your next job is more likely to have a graduate degree than times in the past. And so I'm going to put a bunch of data in front of you here that sort of illustrates this. First, this is an article from the New York Times from 10 years ago, 2011, saying that the master's is now the fastest growing degree. The number awarded is more than doubled since the 1980s, and this rate is increasing substantially. This is 10 years ago. So what about more recently? Well, here's some data from the U.S. Census Bureau, and there's a couple things I want to point out on this. Number one is that the one second from the left, it says master's degrees. Look at that growth from 2000 to 2018. It's more than doubled as far as the number of degree holders. Same thing on the far right, the number of doctoral degrees. The fact is that this is rapidly accelerating. This is what I mean when I say that it's likely that your competition for your next job is likely to hold a master's degree. The other point I wanted to make on this is if you look at the part on the far left, talking about bachelor's degrees, look at the growth in individuals who hold a bachelor's degrees. It hasn't doubled, but it's grown significantly. One possible takeaway from this is that while an undergraduate degree is certainly very valuable, it is less of a differentiator today than it was even in 21 years ago in 2000. So again, this is what I mean when I say that your competition is much more likely to have it, and it could be a differentiator if it comes down to you and another candidate. Number two, not surprisingly, since there are more of them on the market, it is now more increasingly desired by employers. Employers are seeing that more people have graduate degrees, and they figure, hey, we can hire more people with graduate degrees under the assumption that people who have graduate degrees are more intelligent or make better decisions or are better employees. And so it's very likely that not only is your competition likely to have a graduate degree, but also the job itself could either prefer or require the person coming into the role to have a graduate degree. This was documented by Fast Company 5 years ago when they had the headline, "The master's degree becoming the new bachelor's in hiring." More, again, employers saying exactly what I just said, are looking to hire candidates with advanced degrees than ever before. And the shift is noticeable too. In a poll by Career Builder, they were talking about companies shifting, roles that they used to have was a role that would have an undergraduate, a 4-year degree as the sort of required entry point. More and more, they're shifting more toward having a master's degree as a requirement or a preferred quality for an applicant. So this is the direction that's going. And here's more data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics talking about going forward, looking from, this was in 2016, looking forward to 2026. Again, sort of reinforcing that this is a trend that is expected to continue to grow. Here it is in graphical form. The point is made again. Again, this is looking forward from 2016 to 2026. But look at the second from the top there, master's degree. Look at that's the projected growth in required education for entry-level employment. Okay, master's degree is by a significant margin the largest of this. Right behind it is a doctoral professional degree. So again, increasingly valued by employers. Third for reason to pursue graduate school, salary and unemployment data. This is something that is noteworthy for a lot of people. Very noteworthy. Overall, likely to make more salary and less likely to be unemployed. Overall, it's no guarantee. Okay, this doesn't mean that if I get a graduate degree, I'm going to make a ton more money and I'll never be unemployed. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying overall, the data clearly shows, and this is not something that's recent. This graph shows, this is again the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. The purple line at the top is for people who have advanced degrees. The one right underneath it, that sort of brownish color, is for people who have bachelor's degrees. You can see that from 2000 to 2019, the consistent growth in both areas, but the advanced degree outpaces people who have a bachelor's degree. Again, overall, just because you have a master's degree doesn't guarantee that you're going to make more money, but overall the odds be with you. And on the other side, unemployment, it's an inverse relationship. Basically the takeaway from here is that the more education you have, the less likely you are to be unemployed. So that's a good thing. So it's nice to know that overall education does pay. Again, I can't emphasize that enough. It's no guarantee, but overall. Number 4 reason to pursue graduate school, you're in a field where a grad degree is expected for advancement. Think about that next kind of job. Do most people have that? You're thinking about your ideal next job. Do most people seem to have graduate degrees in that area? That could be an indicator that you might need one to advance to that level. Or do some people have it? If only some people have it, if you get one, could it be a differentiator? Could it give you an edge up on your competition for that particular role? Or on the other side of it, maybe you just simply don't need it for that next role. It could be that simple that, if you look at, look ahead to the future and look at those kinds of roles you're thinking about having, if most people don't have a graduate degree, maybe it's the case that you simply don't need one. So just, again, all things to be thinking about as you make this decision. Finally, help qualify for a new career. The 5th reason to pursue graduate school. We had some individuals thinking about this, and it's an interesting potential path to take. Speaking of paths, sometimes it's very clear as far as, again, if you are going to be a medical doctor, you're going to need a medical degree. If you are going to be a lawyer, you will need a legal degree. Now, a JD, the legal degree, can be, a lot of people get those and use those for tangential to legal careers, let's say. So it's not like you have to use that to be an attorney, but the point is that sometimes that degree, a master's degree in nursing, is going to qualify you for an accelerated role in the nursing field. It's very clear. Sometimes it's more nebulous, like an MBA. An MBA is a wonderfully powerful degree, but it can go in so many different directions. You can do so many different things with an MBA. And so you just want to be thinking about that as far as kind of the kind of degree that you're thinking about doing and the career paths that it does open up to you potentially. Just keep in mind that a graduate degree It can be part of your career development. It can be an aspect of your career development, but rarely is it that one sort of magic wand that is going to guarantee you a great job for life. It is part of your career development. It's not the one single thing, okay? So it can help you qualify for a new career, depending on the degree. That's a very important thing to know. So 5 reasons to pursue graduate school. There you have them. I hope that was valuable for you. I do want to tune, the next thing up is 8 reasons to not pursue graduate school, but I'm going to take a quick detour on our agenda here, and I'm actually going to go to one of the final things here, how you could pay for grad school. And I want to give you one of those case studies now. So I'm actually jumping ahead in our agenda. We'll come back to the 8 reasons to not pursue graduate school in a moment. But in the meantime, let's do one of these case studies. Meet Madison. Madison has applied she's going to go to grad school, and she's going to be funding it through scholarships and loans. She's done her research and she applies to 7 programs. And on her rank ordered list, included on those 7 are these 3. Now, I have on this slide here, you see number 7 choice, number 4 choice, number 1 choice. These are Madison's rankings. These are not, U.S. News or World Report or any of their rankings. This is her personal ranking. She has done her research up front, and she knows why she's applying to these schools and why they are ranked in this order. Number 7 school is a very good school, well-respected, solid reputation. Number 4 is prestigious, strong reputation, broadly considered one of the best. And the number 1 school is that uber awesome, incredible, widely respected, everyone universally acknowledges it's one of the most outstanding schools in Madison's field. And by the way, Madison's field could be a lot of different things. It could be social work, it could be biology, it could be physiology, it could be, any of the ologies. It could be anything. It could be engineering. This is meant to be a universal example, okay? And so she applies to these schools, and she's admitted to 3, and she receives 2 scholarships. Good for Madison. What does she get? At her 7 choice school, she gets a full tuition ride and a living stipend, which is a very nice thing to get. So Madison's going to walk away from that institution with no debt. She also gets into a number 4 ranked school, and there she gets a half tuition scholarship, and she'll walk away from there with $50,000 in debt. So that's a good thing. But I said she's admitted to 3. Well, guess what? She also got into number 1 school. Number 1 school, she got in, but no scholarship. And she's going to walk away with $150K in debt. So pretty good debt load, but she did get in, so she could go there. So this brings us to our 4th poll. I want you to put yourself in Madison's position. Which of these 3 choices would you select based on the information at hand here? Would you go to that number 7 school and walk away completely debt-free? Number 4 and have some debt, or number 1 with 150K in debt, again, knowing the sort of the quality or the reputation that each of these institutions has. Be very interested to see what the responses are. Take a moment to digest, and once we have a critical mass, Maura will show us the results. No wrong answers to this, by the way. Kind of a theme of these polls today. No wrong answers. Trying to do anything. Okay, 67%. I'm going to write this down. 67% are going to go to the number 7 school. 22% are going to go to the number 4 school. 11% to the number 1 school. So 2/3 are saying, okay, that no debt thing is really appealing. That's me. That's what I want to do. I'm going to go to a very good school, solid reputation, and oh, by the way, graduate with no debt. That's awesome. And then some others sort of on other sides of the discussion. That's great. Thank you for that information. That is very helpful. Thank you for your input. We will come back to this, to Madison, a little bit later. Okay, so moving forward in our agenda, we're now going to talk about 8 reasons to not pursue graduate school. Number 1, you're in a field where a graduate degree may not be necessary. And I have 2 examples here, public relations and human resources. And before anybody says, Kevin, you're full of it, I'll just point out really quickly that I have worked in both public relations and human resources personally. And I can personally attest that you don't need necessarily to have a graduate degree in these 2 areas. Could it help? Absolutely. And could certain roles require it? Sure, it could. Talking overall, these are areas where a graduate degree isn't as necessary or as valued in some others. Okay, so as you look around you, as you look at your chosen career path that you're on right now, you're in a field, you're in a functional area where generally people don't have master's degrees, it's possible that it simply may not be necessary. And so that could be one reason to not pursue graduate school. On the other side, you're in a field where some credential is more valued. IT and accounting are two good things there. Accounting, the CPA designation, IT, various certificate programs. There are all kinds of other certificates or accreditations or licensures or, online badges or all kind of, there are a number of different credentials that are out there that could be in some cases as valuable or more valuable in that particular field as a graduate degree. And so once again, as you're looking around your peer group in that particular area, a good thing to be thinking about is, what credentials do they have? Maybe it's grad school, maybe it's not, maybe it's something else. Maybe grad school isn't the appropriate thing for you to do in your particular field. Number three is you don't see yourself in that on that path long term. Does it make sense to spend 2 or 3 or 4 years in graduate school when the particular path that you're on, given a number of different circumstances, professional, personal, a combination of them, does it make sense for you to complete a master's degree in that kind of environment when 5 or 10 years down the road, that there's going to be a major change? Again, highly personal sort of thing, but just, think about, graduate school as an investment in yourself. And if you don't have a sufficient time horizon to realize the return on that investment, maybe it's not worth it. Again, highly subjective sort of thing. This fourth point among the reasons to not pursue graduate school work, I think gets a special mention. Fulfilling careers and moving up are two very different things. I think a lot of times that we get caught in this whole business of, to develop your career, you have to move up, you have to climb the ladder, you have these different things. Well, as someone who has coached a lot of people, and I bet Maura would corroborate this information, there are other paths to happiness than simply moving up. That is perhaps for some individuals that might result in career happiness or fulfillment, but there are many, many other things that can lead to happy, fulfilling careers other than moving up or moving into leadership. Dr. Beverly Kay is a guru in this area. Her book, Up Is Not the Only Way, is recommended reading. Really good stuff. And she, really, gives the reader permission that, hey, you know what? You don't have to move up as part of your career development if you don't want to. If it's not part of who you are or what you want to do, you might have a very fulfilling career at other levels of the organization. And that's okay. It really is. If you want to be a leader, great, be a leader, but you don't have to be. Related to that is Angie Noel's book, Leadership, Love It or Leave It, where she calls attention to the fact of the same thing, that leadership is just, it's not for everyone. And the world needs both in people's at the leadership level and at the individual contributor level. This is something by Susan Cain, who has written a number of books. All of them are outstanding. And she talks about this, the focus of the romance of leadership theory, inaccurately attribute all organizational success to failure to as a leader, and all the success goes to the leader, ignoring the followers. I love this headline. Not leadership material, good. The world needs more followers. And so again, I would just call attention to the fact that moving up is not necessarily the only way one can develop a career and have happiness in their chosen profession. There are a lot of other ways you could potentially do it. So number 5 reason to not potentially pursue graduate school, you want to advance, and there are other viable ways. For example, within your current organization, perhaps there are leadership development programs, and maybe they have a whole corporate development area where they develop people internally. They have a program for rising leaders, or where they're developing their bench for succession planning, or where they have various certificates that you can develop internally and add new skills. Again, for those of us who are not interested in going into leadership roles, stretch assignments where you get different exposure to a different part of the organization. All different. In other words, graduate school is wonderful for some individuals, but it doesn't have the monopoly on ways you can develop yourself and potentially to advance if that is your goal. And so just remember that graduate school is not the only way. Okay. Reason number 6, the timing's not good. A lot of different life things get in the way and circumstances happen and whatever. And it's just, it's just not happening. I believe me, I understand that. I can tell you too, that rarely is there going to be that one perfect time to do it, where, the stars align and the sun comes out and all of a sudden you have no other commitments and it's the perfect time for me to go to graduate school. It really, that doesn't happen usually. And I can, again, having worked with literally thousands of graduate students, there's usually something that in your schedule, in your life, and your other commitments that potentially are going to have to be backburnered for, 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it might be. And while you're going to have to shift around some priorities. But I understand that for some individuals, hey, life happens and we've got other commitments. Sometimes things can't be shifted around. But again, just remember that there's almost certainly not going to be that one perfect moment for you to do graduate school. Final two reasons to potentially not pursue graduate school. You're lost in your career and you think that grad school is somehow going to, again, be that magic wand and is going to reveal all the answers to you. Some career exploration in grad school is going to be okay to a point, but for many graduate school applications, for example, you will probably be asked in the application essays and potentially in an interview what your career goals are, because the admissions team is going to need to know whether or not your past experiences and your interpersonal qualities and your skills and abilities, plus that graduate degree, is going to lead to the career outcome that you've articulated that you want to do after you graduate. And so if that whole narrative doesn't flow logically and make sense, most admissions committees are going to flag that and you're going to have a harder time getting admitted. So understand that some exploration is probably going to be okay within graduate school, but if you're looking for graduate school to basically completely reveal all the career answers to you, you unfortunately might be disappointed. I would encourage you, if this might be you, to circle back to that why question and do some career exploration now before you commit to, foregoing, a full-time salary and working in the, and going and doing graduate school now. You could be wasting time, effort, and everything else, energy on doing grad school when you haven't really firmly solidified your why yet. That could be a potential issue. Finally, you don't want to face the real world yet. This is more are targeted for people who are, near or in undergraduate or coming out of undergraduate and facing, and then just say, hey, you know what? I just want to stay in school for another little while longer. I get it. I love school too. I love learning. I love development. But this by itself is not a good reason to go to grad school. So you need to have some other reasons why you might want to do it. So 8 reasons to not pursue grad school. There they are. There you have it. We are having a Q&A at the end. I'll mention that real quick. I hope that you're using the question and answer, the question and answer box or the chat to submit questions. And I hope that we spark some here, and I'm looking forward to that. So I'm going to go ahead and move through these last couple sections here now, and then we'll get to the Q&A at the end of our session. So let's talk about how you can solidify your decision. Again, whether that's, okay, I'm going to do grad school, or okay, I've decided I'm not going to do grad school. So here are some online resources for you. If you're not familiar with the first one here, it's called ONET. If you're not familiar with this, again, US Bureau of Labor Statistics, ONET is outstanding, and its first cousin is My Next Move. Tons of data, tons of information, totally driven by research and by information that they update on a regular basis around careers, functional areas, industries, and you can really do a ton of exploration with real data there about where you might be looking next, what the overall outlook of various professions are, what education might be required for various professions, and so on and so forth. Learn How to Become is another site that is very easy to use. It's, if you go to learnhowtobecome.org, and you basically on that homepage, you basically plug in a profession, and it's very simple. And then it gives you just, you go right down the list of, here's what the outlook is, here's what this is, here's how you get into that kind of role, here are the next kinds of roles you might consider. I mean, it's very user friendly. Learn How to Become is a great resource. Identify real world examples is another way to do it. LinkedIn is a great starting point where, again, if you think that you want to have a role as a product manager, okay, great. But you're thinking, okay, how do I do that? And do I need a master's degree to do that? Well, go to LinkedIn and start looking at some product managers. Go look at their, and sort of reverse engineer where they've been and how they got into that role and what qualifications they had, including the grad degree or not, when they got into that role. And in addition to looking at profiles, also conducting informational interviews where you actually are leveraging your network and you're interacting with individuals who have the kinds of roles that you might want to have now, or who work in the kind of industry that you might want to target next, and are asking them very specific strategic questions around hey, do you like what you do? What's the typical week like? What kinds of credentials does someone normally have to get into this kind of role? What do you wish you knew then that you know now about this kind of area or this kind of company? Would you recommend this field for someone who's considering breaking into it for the first time? What advice would you have for me? These are typical questions you would ask in an informational interview. And oh, by the way, for both LinkedIn research and for informational interviews, we're looking for trends. We're not looking for isolated instances where, we can always find, that person who founded their own company as a high school dropout and is like a multi-billionaire and all this kind of stuff. That's great, but that's the exception, not the rule. We're looking for trends. We want to play the odds here. Okay. Yeah. You might think that you're just that sharp or unique or whatever, that you can do that. And maybe you can, and don't let me stop you. Okay. But overall, when we're managing our career, typically we're kind of playing the odds, and we're seeing, the people who have come before us, what their path was like, and then how can we sort of engineer our own to look like theirs to maximize our potential success. So one other fun way that is probably the most obvious, and that is that if you're thinking about a particular kind of job, go to the job boards and look at those job postings and see what they require. Go to Indeed is obviously a great website as far as an aggregator. Tons of jobs on Indeed. LinkedIn's job board is very good as well. Those are the two I would recommend. And as you're thinking about various careers, on number one here, you've actually done your research and you've talked to individuals, and you have a good sense of kind of, okay, what kinds of roles you might want to target next. Then actually go out and look at job postings, because at some point in theory, you're going to be applying based on those job postings, and understand this is a moving target. What could be a requirement now, in 5 years, it could have shifted, but we have to go with the information that we have at hand. What kinds of education requirements are they actually looking for people in that targeted next position? And as you see trends in that area, that should indicate to you in a big way whether or not a graduate degree would be required or not. So there's some ways you can further solidify your decision. So get into some case studies here. We've already met Madison. We'll go into some others here and talk about ways you could potentially pay for the graduate degree, and then we'll get into our Q&A. So here we go with ways you could pay for graduate school. There are 6 things listed here. Personal savings. Some people are fortunate to have a lot of that. Some people are not. But whether or not you tap into that for grad school is, you might think about how you might finance that. There are pros and cons to doing that. Whether, there's some family money involved there. Parents sometimes, actually a lot of times nowadays, are financing grad degrees or partially, and that's fine. The best, I think, is the third one: the scholarships, the grants, the stipends, the fellowships, etc. That's the free money. That's the good stuff, the kind that they give you and you never have to pay back. And that's a really good thing. And every graduate program is going to have potentially different processes for how you apply and get that kind of, if you will, free money. Usually it's part of the application process, whether they consider you based on your regular application or there's a separate scholarship application. Loans, many of you may be familiar with that from undergraduate, whether they be federally funded loans or on an independent basis. Work study jobs, many graduate students have an on-campus job of some kind that either partially or fully funds their graduate study. And then finally, in tuition reimbursement from the employer, which is kind of has both pros and cons to it. The pro, of course, is that, it's money. They're helping you pay for it. The downside is that typically, not always, but typically, you owe the employer time after you finish your classes. And so for some individuals, that is an easy trade-off to make. For others, they don't want to have that restriction. And so they actually willingly forego that tuition reimbursement. So again, highly subjective thing, but those are 6 ways you can potentially pay for graduate school. And even if you get a full tuition scholarship, we talked about Madison earlier, that she has a full living stipend. That's awesome. That's kind of rare, especially at the master's degree level, because even if you have a full tuition scholarship, just remember, especially if you're going to be doing a program full time, there's going to be other costs involved: your rent, your car note, your groceries, all those other things. And you have to have a plan for not just how are you going to cover tuition, but how are you going to cover everything else. So knowing that up front and then having a plan going into it is going to be really important. And understand too, you're talking about an investment in your future career here. If you choose to go to graduate school, It's an investment. And if you're very crystal clear on your why, and you're very convinced that, the whole narrative makes sense, that given your experience and your interpersonal qualities and everything you've done up until now, plus this graduate degree is very likely to lead to a certain kind of career outcome, well, then your investment would come through, and then usually that debt is paid off, and then you're off and running with your career. But not everyone is comfortable with that. I totally get it. And so it's, once again, highly subjective decision for all of us to make whether or not to pursue graduate school and how to fund graduate school. Okay, so let's meet Ashley. This is case study number 2 of 3 that we're going to look at. Ashley has been in her current company for 3 years. She likes her job, sees herself doing that for several years to come. She wants to move into positions of greater responsibility. So Ashley has decided that she does want to get more into a sort of leadership role. She looks around at people at her company, her functional role, her industry, and pretty much everybody has master's degrees. So it's pretty clear to Ashley that there's going to be some sort of graduate degree in her future. She does her research, and for her top choice school, she's decided that a part-time program is going to be for her the better way to go. It's a tuition of $30K a year and for 3 years. Her company has a $5,000 annual tuition reimbursement benefit, and she talks to her supervisor and she negotiates another $5K with a couple different stipulations involved. One is that she owes the company 3 years, which is double the usual amount. Usually it's 18 months, but they decide that they're going to go twice that for this extra money. But on top of that, once she finishes that grad degree, Ashley is going to be promoted, and she's going to get $10K more per year guaranteed as part of that. So that's a deal that she's happy to run with. That takes care of $10,000 of the annual tuition. She's going to pay another 10 out of her savings, and the other 10K a year, she's going to go and take out some loans. So fast forward 3 years, Ashley, she takes that, now she's been promoted, she gets 10K extra per year, and she takes that 10K and she turns it right back around and puts it off toward paying her loans. She also rebuilds her savings slowly but surely over those 3 years. And the bottom line for her is that 3 years after graduation, she's debt-free, she's been promoted, she has her master's, she continues to collect her higher salary. And oh, by the way, if she wanted to leave her organization, if she wanted to, those handcuffs are now off. She could now do that. And so that's a good deal for Ashley. This is a really good deal for Ashley. Ashley has a good relationship with her supervisor. She negotiated that extra tuition reimbursement. She likes her current company. She has no problem being there for an extra amount of time after she finishes her degree. All these, this aligns all pretty well for Ashley, but just because it works for her doesn't mean that it would work for you. There could be a lot of those factors that we mentioned as part of her case that would not apply to you, and this would not be a good thing. Ashley chose to do a part-time program. Maybe you're thinking definitely a full-time program, or definitely an online program, or a hybrid program, whatever it might be. And maybe you can use tuition reimbursement for that. Maybe you can't. There's a lot of different things that have to sort of fall into place for this to be an ideal program. So once again, it's a great illustration of what was a great opportunity and plan for Ashley here may not be for you. So this is something you have to sort of chart out as you decide if you're going to go to grad school, and if so, how you're going to fund it. Okay, case study number 3 is Mr. Tyler here. Tyler, he finished his undergraduate degree 6 years ago. He's got a sky-high GPA. So Tyler's a smart guy, okay? He's got a job, but he's unhappy with his career. He's not sure what he wants to do. A lot of his friends are getting MBAs, and they're saying, Tyler, you should get an MBA. We like our jobs. It's done good things for us and everything. Hey, why don't you should do an MBA? And so Tyler says, yeah, I should do an MBA. So Tyler decides he's going to do an MBA. So not having much in savings, and he doesn't want to take on any debt, he decides that cost is going to be his number one factor in choosing a school. So in fact, he Googles low-cost MBA, delighted to find many options. And by the way, Tyler is interested specifically in an MBA. Ashley, who we met earlier, just like Madison, the first example, Ashley could be in engineering, social work, nonprofit management, sociology, a lot of different things. But Tyler, he's looking MBA specific, and he's delighted to find a number of different low-cost MBA options. And it turns out not only are they low cost, but he can finish his MBA in a year. This is great news for Tyler, he thinks. He applies to 3 local programs, and he's quickly admitted to all, probably not surprisingly, given that sky-high GPA. he gets his parents to cover the $12K tuition. And as it turns out, his program it's even better. It's only going to be 10 months. And so he leaves his job and he goes to be a full-time MBA student. And after 10 intense months of a lot of classwork and whatnot, he graduates. Tyler now has an MBA degree. Unfortunately for Tyler, he still doesn't know what he wants to do. The 10-month program, the intensity did not allow much time for career exploration. The low-cost program offered very little when it comes to career support. And most of his classmates were in this basically to check the box that they had an MBA. And so they didn't really have much to add to the conversation, or they weren't kind of the high-end individuals that are in some other MBA programs that could, kind of help Tyler with networking and job opportunities and that sort of thing. And so Tyler, even though he now has his MBA and in theory, he's debt-free, he's still pretty much stuck in his career. And so the takeaway here is that low cost in less time doesn't necessarily make it a good option. For some individuals, depending on their why, that actually could be an okay scenario. I would tell you, no matter if it's an MBA or any other kind of master's degree that you may be considering, buyer beware when it comes to low cost or very short duration. For programs that are competing on low cost or shorter duration, think about what they're not competing on, that being, the quality of the institution or the quality of the faculty or the career outcomes or anything like that. Every program is going to compete on certain things. And if they're competing on cost and duration, to me, that's an immediate red flag. But again, for some individuals, maybe that's the way to go. In Tyler's case, he didn't keep his why in mind. He was lost in his career and he just decided that he was going to do an MBA, and he figured that this was just going to sort of somehow solve all of his problems. And he was lost going in. It's not a surprise. He's lost coming out. So Tyler is a good one to kind of keep in mind. Finally, let's circle back to our friend Ashley here. I'm sorry, Madison. Sorry, we're going to talk about Ashley. This is Madison. Madison, we talked about her. Remember, she had three options: her 7, 4, and number 1 ranked schools, which is awesome. A little bit of extra information. Madison digs a little further and looks at their career centers, which actually published starting salary outcomes. And by the way, for certain graduate degrees, not all, no guarantees, for certain grad degrees, these kinds of career outcomes are not all that far from the reality. So again, this is just for illustrative purposes. I'm not saying that you would automatically earn this kind of salary if you get a graduate degree, but again, for illustrative purposes. And what is Madison looking at? Turns out that for her 7th ranked school, average starting salary is 110. The middle school, number 4, is 140. And for that top ranked school, average, not a guarantee, average 180. Okay, so think about that relative to the potential debt or not debt that she might particularly have. So this is our final poll. Now that you have that information in mind about salary data, again, average salary, now which one would you choose? If you're Madison, would you go for the number 7 school, and collect that salary and not have any debt, split the distance, and again, average starting salary? I'm curious to know have we changed anyone's mind here? We'll see in a minute. We leaned very heavily on this one not early, but pretty heavily on this one in our earlier poll. But I'm curious to know if we've changed anyone's minds when it comes to this. Here we go. We did. Okay. So before we knew the salary data, we said we had 67% choosing the number 7 school. Now we're down to number 30. Now we're down to 38%. For the number 4 choice school, it was 22%. Now half individuals on our webinar here today are choosing that middle one. They're splitting the distance. And the number 1 stayed roughly the same. So it did shift. And what the takeaway here is that for certain graduate programs, this kind of career outcomes, this kind of data is available. Not in all cases, but in some cases it is. In other cases, you can extrapolate some career center data from the overall career center, from the overall university, and apply it to graduate programs and get a sense for kind of how certain schools compare to each other. Again, it's not 100% predictive. It's overall data, it's average data, but it could influence what you might do relative to where you might attend and how much debt you'd be willing to take on. So now that I put this in front of you, let me put one other wrinkle in here, and there's no poll attached to this, but just some food for thought. Let's say that, oh, by the way, again, these are the three choices for Madison or for you. And we have that salary data in mind, but unfortunately, halfway through Madison's program, the economy just absolutely nosedives, and she faces a very shaky jobs market upon graduation. We saw this in 2008 when the stock market crashed, when we went into the Great Recession, and we've seen it obviously more recently due to the pandemic, when all of a sudden things had been looking pretty rosy, and then all of a sudden just the economy just took an absolute nosedive. And if you were in graduate school at either one of those times, you came out into an economy that was very different on the negative than it was when you came in. We have no control over that. We have no way of necessarily knowing that. If we did know that, we would probably be playing in the stock market a lot. But these things happen, and it's just one of those things to know that this is an illustration that there are things that are going to be outside of your control. Even if you do really good research and you look into Career Center outcomes and look into average started salaries and that sort of thing, there could still be things that are outside of our control, such as the overall economy. And so people are going to have different, even knowing that, people are going to have different tolerances for debt and for risk. And so, where on those three schools that Madison had to choose from you fall is unique to you. Your neighbor, your friend, your best friend, your sister, your cousin could all have different opinions about which of those is going to be the better choice for them. And that's just it. It's the better choice for them. So make sure that you're doing thorough research. Use the data and information that is available to you and seek out additional information so you can make good choices, both in your decision whether or not to apply for grad school, and if you choose to pursue grad school, where you might choose to go. Use good research and recognize that this is a highly subjective decision. No one else can make this except for you. So that wraps up today's agenda. I really appreciate all the time that everyone has given me today. Thank you to Maura as well for the opportunity. This is my information. I would again welcome you to look me up, contact me, email me. I'm on LinkedIn. I do speaking things like this for certain organizations. If you're in a professional organization and might be interested in talking further about that, let's talk. But overall, if I can help you in any way, I would be happy for you to reach out to me. And if nothing else, let's connect on LinkedIn. So with that, Maura, let me hand it back over to you and let's see what questions we have.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I always learned so many good tips when I talk to you. So this is no exception. We do have a number of good questions that have come in. So if anyone has anything else that's percolating in your mind, you can type it into the Q&A. The first question for you comes from someone who writes that they're in their early 40s and have reached a point in their career where an MBA will help them get to the next level. Okay. How important do you think an in-person program is for someone in their position versus a virtual program? Mm-hmm. What about programs that require GREs versus those that don't?
Sure. Okay. So online programs versus in-person programs when it comes to MBAs was the nature of this question. I think even 5 years ago, and certainly 10 years ago, I would have had a very different response to this. What I can tell you is that online programs, not just on the graduate business space, but across the board, and in many cases have come a long way. I would submit to you and to anyone else that a graduate degree, that experience is as much about what happens outside the classroom as what happens inside the classroom. Yes, you should be learning inside the classroom, but a huge benefit of a graduate business program, and especially an MBA, is the connections that you make. It's those individuals who are in your classes. And so I would suggest that if you're going to be choosing an online MBA program, that could be the best comprehensive, best fit decision for you. I would encourage you to choose a program that encourages and facilitates outside of the classroom activity for those MBA for the students in that program. And most of them do that. And most of them have that understanding now as well. But it's my feeling that we're not yet to a point, even given all the wonderful technology that we have, that an online MBA program can fully replicate the experience that an in-person program can have. On the other hand, for the individual who asked this question, it could also be the nature of what kind of MBA do you really need? So for example, it could be the case that if you're talking about accelerating your career within your own organization, they may be much, I mean, again, if your goal is to stay within your current organization, but just be able to qualify for higher level positions in this person's case, you may not need to go to an in-person program. You just may need an online program, a very good online program, and get the training that you need. And then you have that credential to your name and you're able to accelerate within your organization. So it's a great question. And those online programs are thriving right now, and for good reason, but they're definitely not, and in many respects, they're not at the same level in many cases as an in-person program, but they're good choices for everybody out there.
That's great. That's helpful. And I think the point that you kept coming back to about picking what's right for you and understanding what's right for you really is so critical, because it does make a huge difference.
Sure. Absolutely. No doubt about it. You know, why are you doing this? I mean, you know, if there's no reason for you, I mean, when it comes to the question was about MBAs, I mean, you know, when it comes to those kinds of degrees, usually people who are thinking about changing careers, changing companies, doing a career shift, traditionally a full-time program is more the way to go. If nothing else, again, because there's the networking opportunities. And when it's not a pandemic environment, you have this whole notion of on-campus recruiting, which is a really, really important thing. And that involves, you know, cocktail hours and networking receptions and information sessions and on-campus interviewing, all that sort of thing. And if you're doing an online program, or if you're doing a part-time program, you know, if your dream company is on campus at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, you might be in a meeting at your current company at 10 a.m. on Tuesday and you can't do it. Well, you know, you're missing out. So there are trade-offs to every different program format.
That's great. That's great. Well, here's another question for you. What are your suggestions for someone who has a graduate degree in a field of study that's different from the area in which they want to work?
You know, that's a really good question, because I'm trying to think of an example. So for example, if someone had a degree in nonprofit management and they wanted to go into corporate finance, or if they had a degree that was maybe somewhat related, you know, if they had a master's degree in, say, social work, and they wanted to go into healthcare administration, somewhat related in a tangential kind of way. It's been my experience, and I'm kind of going over to my career coach side of things right now. It's been my experience that having a graduate degree is the nature of the graduate degree in the specific discipline that you get it in is more relevant and more important the closer it is to that time that you get that degree. So in other words, if you just got a master's in, I think it says social work, you know, for the first 5 or 10 years, you know, the jobs that you have there are going to be, you know, probably, hopefully, likely aligned with social work. After that, you kind of gain this track record of success as a master's degree holder, and you have certain experiences or leadership qualities or accomplishments on your resume or on your LinkedIn profile that frankly speak for themselves. And as you get further away from that master's degree, it becomes more of a sort of, I hate to say this, but it becomes more of a kind of a check the box. Okay, she has a master's degree. Okay, it may not be, you know, what we really, you know, a master's degree in electrical engineering or a master's degree in accounting or whatever it might be, but she has that, and then look at this track record of success. My experience is that when it comes to jobs, especially for seasoned professionals, most hiring organizations and hiring managers are more interested in people who have, you know, once they have a graduate degree, if that's part of what they need for that role, really what they're looking for is someone who has a GSD, and that is get stuff done. In other words, does this person, are the results there? Does this person drive, does this person have the accomplishments? Do they have the results? Do they drive outcomes? Or is this the kind of person who basically, you know, comes into a role, keeps the seat warm, and that's about it? And so, I would encourage the person who asked this question, it's a very good one. I would say that as you get further and further away from the time when you earn that degree, then the area that you have that grad degree becomes less and less important. That having been said, the requirements of a job are still the requirements of a job. And one way you can demonstrate that you do have those are, again, other things that don't involve getting another master's degree, whether it's a certificate program, go to LinkedIn Learning or take some online courses, or go get some executive ed somewhere. Many universities have short programs just to, for new, quantitative analysis for new managers or something like that. These mini courses that are out there, and you can put that in your resume and in your cover letter and in interviews, you can speak to that. Like, hey, yes, my master's degree is in whatever, not what you were looking for, but here's how I've been keeping my skills sharp, and here's how I can demonstrate that I have what you need for this particular role. And oh, by the way, look at this list of accomplishments that I have on my resume from the time after I got my master's degree.
And I think that's what's helpful too, is acknowledging that they will ask why you got that degree. And so, it's important, as you mentioned, to call it out and explain, look, yes, I acknowledge I have the master's that you want. It is in something else, but this is why that's beneficial and how I've built upon that, I think is really
Points.
great.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're going to squeeze in one last question.
Okay.
What
Excellent.
is your opinion on wanting to pursue an advanced degree in another country? Thinking about pursuing an art history master's and wanting to study or live abroad again?
Okay. It all gets back to your why. Why are you doing this? What is the outcome that you're hoping to get from that? And that's a totally subjective thing. I can take more broadly speaking, when it comes to degrees from outside the United States, good for good. The world is shrinking. And I think that many hiring managers and organizations these days are recognizing that there are other fine institutions around the world, not just in this case, the United States. But I tell you what, you might be taking a little bit of a risk, because one of the things that you get with graduate studies is, again, this whole notion of sort of you have the, if you will, the brand name of the institution as part of your resume and as part of your LinkedIn profile, as part of you as a professional for the duration of your professional career. The Holy Cross brand name is awesome. I mean, it is a phenomenal institution. You don't need me to tell you that. If you then add a graduate degree from an institution that, through no fault of its own, is just lesser known in the United States, I have to wonder if you're doing yourself a little bit of a disservice. But again, this is but here's the other thing: again, your why? Is it your goal to actually work in, I think, in Europe? You said, I mean, is it your goal to work over there? And could that institution actually be much better known where you ultimately want to build your career and build your life? Well, then that might seem to be actually the leading candidate for going and doing over that. But if the goal is to go over there and then come back here, as my suggestion would be, as part of your research, will be to make sure that that institution and its degree programs and everything else is on a level that will lead to a successful career outcome for you. Again, under the assumption that we're doing this for career edification, or career building, not just, for our own, learning and development and that sort of thing. So it's a great question. I don't have a concrete answer for you because it hugely depends on your why.
Yes. But I think that's helpful. And that does provide some really good insight into areas to research and really make sure that why is really firm before you make any of these decisions.
Absolutely. And I mean, I hope it's presented as like, this is a self-discovery moment. You have a chance to talk to some people and kind of do some and kind of take a step back and kind of think about, hey, what are my values? What are my skills? What are my motivated interests? And how does my career sort of build into those things, or how can I build those things into my career? I hope people embrace that opportunity to learn more about themselves and then think about how they might craft a career that dovetails nicely with that, not as a burden, like I've got to figure this out. Like, hey, take it as an opportunity. And again, this is all part of the coaching that I do. If someone's interested in going down that road a little further, I'd be happy to talk about it further.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. This has been a real pleasure. I know we went over by a few minutes, but it was nice to squeeze in that last question.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Maura, and thank you all for attending. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing you all at another webinar soon. Enjoy. Bye-bye, everyone.